chilling out, nice and relaxing and cooling. Gonna shoot some people outside of school. So when the last time we were dressed like each other? I like that. Yeah. And you were dressed like us too. We were dressed together. All right, hello, shalom, welcome. Come on in, peace be upon everybody. Peace be upon everybody. How you doing? Almost back at the abode. I'm too old for cribs, so I'm almost back at the house. Hopefully you all are doing well. Matter of fact, I forget, why do they call cribs again? I learned this in something. Oh yeah, a crib is shaped like a trough. So you probably don't want to live in one of those anyways. Probably don't want to call your children's bed a crib anymore either, because your child is not an animal. And definitely not something that should be ate. And how you guys doing? As you can see, I'm on the road. I'll try to get to the comments in a little bit. Almost back. I apologize about this rising. I tried to make it happen. I don't know if anything was able to happen on the conference call line. I tried to make it happen where I could come on live where I was at the time. It just was not going to happen. I was barely able to send out some emails to the ministerial staff and at least let them know that everything was all right. I'm just getting to a place where I can start honoring and answering different things or whatever. So there's a bunch of stuff that just wasn't sent out. I did not check the stuff for classes today. I didn't do a lot of stuff that was supposed to be done today. So I apologize. I'm legit, I think probably about an hour ago, we finally started getting signal on a regular basis. So we thank y'all. We appreciate you. Thanks for your presence. I believe my wife, the Honorable Alma, is on. Oh, so hold on 1 second. Salama, can you turn the volume down, please? When I'm on, I can't have that. It doesn't have to be all the way down. Just thank you. Yeah. So, but thank y'all for being on. We appreciate you. Not sure who's on. My wife is on next to me, though. I don't know if she want to say hello. She said, sure. I'll put her on the spot. That's it. I didn't know if you wanted. I'm not saying you want to put your face on the camera. If you just want to say hello.
Shalom, everyone.
So we are headed back, trying to make sure we're getting back safely, and that I am not speeding. As sometimes I have I do, especially as I get closer. So, but thank you all for being on with us. We appreciate you. Once again, sorry about not. Thank you. Sorry about not being on again. Signal was rough. I even tried to make sure the ministerial staff could see, because this is the second Monday in a row. So what I think I'm going to do, for those who are on, I'll try and put this on Google Calendar, and I'll just have to go ahead and lose a little bit of sleep. Not a bunch, but a little bit of sleep. But to make up for it, probably the next 3 days, I'm probably going to have to get up early, because I still got to make up. So now I got to make up 2 early rising Bible study sessions, and I have to make up a Tuesday Patreon session still. So I think what we'll do, just to make it easy, is just the next 3 days I'll be prepared. I don't know if I'll stay on the full hour, but at least we'll make sure we give you guys about a half hour and probably get up. So I'll put them on for those who want to get on live. We'll put them on Patreon. We'll put them on YouTube as well, since it's something that, it's a makeup. With the Patreon one, we can't put on YouTube, but the 2 early rising sessions, we'll make sure that we put those up there for you guys to be able to participate with on those, and you can make up on them no matter where. So that'll be on YouTube. That'll also be on Patreon. Hopefully that makes sense. I wanted to go through this real quick with y'all, share some stuff with you real quick, and hopefully you guys will be able to catch what I'm saying. So I want to call this today, and hopefully we'll be able to upload this on YouTube. So prayerfully, those who are part of the YouTube family will see this later on as well. I want to call this tonight. We're going to call this a 5-piece. Now, these are 5 things that you hear me mention all the time. I think I got all 5 pictures set up and ready to go, prayerfully so. But we're going to call this today a 5-piece. What do we mean by a 5-piece? What we mean by 5-piece, these are 5 things that you've been eating from, and you may not be aware of these 5 things, right? First things first, before we even get started, I think the one that I don't have on here is, in fact, the lost cause. So Well, oh, all right. I got it. Okay. So I guess I have a picture of that in a second. But first things first, we're gonna upload is the lost cause for you. So as soon as it's texted, I guess I'll disappear for a hot second and come back with that in front of you. Well, we want to start with that one, the lost cause, and we're gonna go through 5 things. You hear me mention them all times, but this 5 piece. I'm not gonna say it'll bless you, but it'll bless your thought process on how are certain things still going on. People say all the time, how did you get a group of people, which is, we're not going in extreme depth on that part, but how do you get a group of people to kind of fall for something and be subservient to something, and how do you get a bunch of people to believe that whatever they're saying is true, right? So I want to give you this 5 piece. I want to give you 5 different things that'll help you to be able to see this a little differently than maybe what you've seen it before during times past. And you've heard me mention these, but now when you hear me mention them from this point on, or anybody else for that matter, you should be able to catch on right away. So hold on. So the first one I'm waiting on, I guess, is the lost cause. So the lost cause is actually, hold on one second. I gotta load. That's the only one I gotta upload still. I'm sorry. Hold on one second. All right. So sorry about that. Hopefully you guys can see. Looks like we got the yellow on the signal, so hopefully it's all right for you guys. But if you can hear me, I guess I can look down just enough to be able to see if you can hear me. Hopefully you can hear me. But we're talking about this 5 piece, right? All right. You see it? Okay, you hear? Okay, cool. Thank you. So this 5 piece. First things first in this 5 piece, right? When you order this 5 piece called Americana, called the West, called Modern Society, called the Beast, whatever. When you look at this 5 piece, first things first, you got to look up the lost cause. The lost cause is simply something that is a lost cause, but they're trying to tell you never lose it. Never. When you hear the lost cause, you're hearing never forget, right? You know how they'll say, like, hey, stop being a victim, be a victor, get over the stuff. Why are you still talking about racism, et cetera, et cetera? But when you hear the lost cause, they're basically saying never forget, right? Like September 11th, never forget. Now, I know as much, see, the reason why you remember September 11th is because September 11th has become your cry, right? If you feel like you're a modern American. If you're not a modern American, it's not your thing, right? So they say never forget. Pearl Harbor, never forget. Some of y'all don't really think about that one that much anyway. I remember that one because specific dates and things happened on my life that were actually kind of traumatic. Plus, I got to go to Pearl Harbor and stand there on Pearl Harbor, so it was a lot of, and I did a lot of ceremonies on that day too. Another thing though that they'll throw, right? 1776, July 4th, 1776, never forget. Right, but when we say Juneteenth, and they say, why are you worried about that, right? So you gotta realize the lost cause rhetoric is part of that. But the lost cause basically says the South shall rise again. So that was pretty simple in the 5 piece, right? The South shall rise again. Never forget, the South shall rise again. Don't think that just because Lee got messed up and Stonewall Jackson died and that President Jefferson Davis, ended up kind of living the rest of his life in shame. Never forget. It's the lost cause. And you know how much is believed? See, once again, we have to realize these are not just Americana. This is not just Americana. This is not just American phenomena, right? This is all over the place. This is all over the globe, right? We talked about this before, but remember, if you're going to talk about this flag, the Confederate flag, you got to admit that the Confederate flag is where? It's in Brazil. It shows up in Europe too, but we don't think about these other places. But it's heavily in Brazil. I don't know if it's heavily in Europe like that because Europe tried its best to kind of get away from the Confederacy because they didn't know who was going to win and who wasn't, right? But people wear this symbol all over the place, right? So a lot of us make the mistake, first of all, thinking this is just a Southern thing. Some of us make the mistake of thinking this is a northern thing, only northern southern thing. This flag shows up in Canada. And it's not even the flag. You got to remember, this lost cause is not even the flag. The Confederate flag, this was the jack. This is the Confederate jack. This is what went in the corner. This is where, like on your flag, if you consider yourself to be an American or ever did, and they taught you those 50 stars, that was the Union Jack. or that was the jack or whatever. Excuse me, right? They were doing the same thing in the Confederacy, right? You had the Confederate jack. The Confederate jack was in the corner. So you either had an all-white flag with this jack in there, which should show you some interesting things going on. You had a flag that was very similar as to the United States, but they put the Confederate jack in there. And I forget what the other one. I think you had a white and red one or something like that, and something was in the corner. This Confederate jack. So whenever this jack shows up, it's not the flag, it's the jack. Why is it important that you make that distinction? Because the jack, when it shows up by itself, has only showed up during racism. Has only showed up when you're about to see a bunch of Confederate statues be erected. Somebody said, what do you mean? No, that's not the case. Yeah, actually. Like, when are the most Confederate statues put up? Because they lie to you. They make you think the Confederate statues had to be put up during the Civil War. But that's not the case at all. The Confederate statues, the most of them either went up in between 1880 and 1900. Second period of time in between 1920 and 1940. Third period of time when they went up heavily was the 1950s, or the 1960s rather, and the 1970s even. Right, so that flag came out when people were like, we're going to make sure that we talk about this lost cause. The lost cause is what? The South should rise again. What was the Civil War about? Civil War was the same thing about the Revolutionary War was about. In every war since then, as far as America, everything has been on this same thing. Is it going to be capitalism that shall survive as the number one power, or chattel slavery that shall survive? Either way, both of them were there. When you had chattel slavery, capitalism existed. They try to trick you and I into this belief that says, oh, okay, capitalism just came along after chattel slavery died. No, capitalism was starting to get so popular that it began to beat chattel slavery in people's minds, right? So that's why you still have what? Chattel slavery and capitalism. So you have that, right? Capitalism and chattel slavery, either way, one of them's going to be above the other. Just like chattel slavery still exists today, even though capitalism's the main thing. It was the daughters of the Confederacy that came by and started saying, we need to make sure we honor our fathers, our brothers, our husbands that died during the war. So they started, and a lot of them were what? Were white, rich, former slave owners. So they had a bunch of money. Even though they lost, they left with a bunch of money, right? Their husbands may have died, may have been in prison, may have lost their positions, whatever. They were able to go somewhere. Some of them escaped to Texas and then came back. Some of them escaped to Texas, went to Brazil and then came back. Some of them went to the Caribbean and then came back. But they were all able to remain rich. I know we were told, oh yeah, all these people, they just lost their money and their homes. And don't forget, Abraham Lincoln, when he gets shot in the head, right after that happens, Andrew Johnson comes along and says, hey, even the stuff that Abraham Lincoln was saying that you guys were traitors and all that stuff, don't worry about that. Y'all can come on back, right? The South shall rise again. And so there was never any punishment to the slave owner. There was really never going to be too much punishment, but Abraham Lincoln had to make an example out of them to a certain extent because, they were traitors. You can't have traitors running around. But Andrew Johnson basically wimped out. He himself also being a Southern gentleman, right? He had to make sure that he, kind of let them do whatever they needed to do. So the South should rise again, the lost cause. We always talk about that. That's number one in the 5-piece. So we got that lost cause, right? What's the second in the 5-piece real quick? What's the second in the 5-piece that we're going to go to? The second in the 5-piece we got to be about is manifest destiny. Manifest destiny. I mentioned this one quite a bit. There's two of them that you need to know about. When you do your research, you need to know about 1452, 1493, right? The Pope of the Roman Catholic Church is making sure he's above both of them. By the way, Sister Carrie, just to let you know, I didn't have a signal until about an hour ago, at least from where we were coming from. So that's why I wasn't able to contact you. So we'll try to reschedule. Thanks for being on. So and all these different things from 1452 to 1493. Now, in 1452, they came up with something called Manifest Destiny. It wasn't really put out there that much because it wasn't necessary that much as of yet, but they had already been traveling to different places all over the globe. All over what we now call the globe. And they had gone all over the place. And what did they do, right? They went to these different places, and what did they say? They said, oh, we're going to make sure that if male there, we will say that we have discovered it. Why? Because the doctrine of discovery says that the Roman Catholic Church is the only thing that can get you to their God, and therefore, if you're going to get to their God, then you have to be one of them, and therefore their God, who created the earth, said they should have dominion over the earth, right? So if you're gonna, so in 1452 they started putting that in place all over the place, and 1493 they actually made it extremely official. They logged it in, they wrote the paperwork, all that, and they made it all the way official. Why did they do that in 1493? Well, in 1492, Cristobal Colon, he sailed the Ocean Blue, or Christopher Columbus, he sailed the Ocean Blue. Part of the reason he did that was to find the land of Asheroth and to make slaves out of the people that were there, so that they could take their wealth that they knew about from Second Esdras, right? They actually used, the Bible, or what people try to call the Apocrypha, to be able to make sure that they went over there, right? So in 1492, Christopher Columbus, he sailed the Ocean Blue. That's guess what? In 1491, that's when they went to the Pope and asked permission. Hey, can we go over there? Can we get this money? Can we get this gold? Can we get the silver and everything? Can we get these slaves? The Pope was like, hey, do what you need to do, long as I get some of those slaves too. They said, no problem. We got you. And therefore, when that was 1491 conversation between him and Queen Isabel, after they beat the last Moorish king that was in what was not quite known as the country of Spain yet. Then in 1492, they send Christopher Columbus to sail the Ocean Blue, right? And then after that, what happens in 1493? They make it extremely legit. The doctrine of discovery that's really been in place, official, unofficial, since 1452. So you got to see in 1452 that's what's going on. At 1493, that's when you get the doctrine of discovery. So from that point on, any land, now they were already kind of doing this anyways, right? But it really didn't pop off till 1493. Why? Because everybody who's leaving, going looking for land, who do they belong to? Who do they have to report to? This is why we keep talking about, even in our modern, in this global cosmology we've been talking about, right? Who do you report to? You report to the Roman Catholic Church. Look to see what they said. If you want, right, we talk about Europe and all these things. There's two people we always seem to take out of it. We always want to go just white people in jail. No. Look at what the Roman Catholic Church said. And also a second one. This is just, I'm not going to talk about this today, but then also make sure that you look at somebody else. Who do you need to look at? You need to look at the Dutch. There's an old saying that says that if Europe did it, the Dutch tested it. So if you want to find out about like the East Indian Trading Company, look at the Dutch Indian Trading Company, right? Like you'll find that most of if you want to look at slave trade, look at what the Dutch did. Nowadays we think that the Dutch are some nice, fun-loving people and they eat chocolate all day. People be saying craziness like that.
And tulips. Mm-hmm. The Dutch. Windmills and tulips and just a pretty countryside. Right, yeah. And the Dutch made their money off of slavery just about before everybody else did. Okay? So you got to know that. But anyways, so the doctrine of discovery. So you put what? The lost cause. The South shall rise again. We didn't lose out. Chattel slavery shall reign supreme. Put that with what? The doctrine of discovery. That's how it's legal to say that when the South rises again, if we discover your stuff, if you're not a white Christian male, according to the Roman Catholic Church, then your stuff doesn't exist. It's not really your land. We discovered it when we showed up because only real men could discover it. Now you say, well, that's kind of crazy. Well, what's the next part? What's the third part of that 5-piece that we're giving you today? Well, the third part of the 5-piece is going to be something that y'all have heard of before. And we're going to go to something called the white man's burden. I'm going to go to something called the white man's burden, right? The white man's burden. Not something I'm making up, right? Y'all see, this is a book by William Easterly. If you want to look it up, take a screenshot of it, right? I'll put this on Patreon as well. The White Man's Burden, William Easterly. And thanks to my wife for finding this particular picture. It tells you why the West's effort to aid the rest have done so much ill and so little, things of constitutional value, or what he says, so much good, or so little good, right? I mention these things all the time, but these are real things, right? And so what is the white man's burden? The white man's burden is legit, not just rhetoric. It's something that was written out. It was taught
right, social construct, white, that it was the burden of white men. By the way, you heard what I said, right? White man's burden. So even though white women participated, right, and they were married into it, and we're not going to act like they were excluded from, exclusive, they didn't have anything to do with it. At the same time, who was in charge? You see, they even put it in there. That's why you got to know your story and his story. You got to know the story and his story. He's telling you the truth. He named it the white man's burden. The author of the book, right? William Easterly did not name this, right? I did not name this. Alma did not name this, right? Nobody in the chat named this, right? This is William Easterly telling you something that was already existed. That's called the white man's burden. The white man's burden is literally something that was written out saying it was the burden of white men. Not white women, not white children. It was the burden of white men to do what? To make sure that they brought civilization to everybody else. Right? That's what the white man's burden was about. The white man's burden was about making sure that they had the burden, right? So that's how they even taught it. You might not like it. Right? They tell a little white boy be like, hey, I don't want to enslave anybody else. I don't want to kill anybody. I don't want to, rape any women or something like that. They say, look, you might not want to, but it's a burden we have to bear. That's how it was taught. Right? You got to see how messed up it is. You got to be messed up in the head. It takes more effort to do stupid things than it does to do smart things. It takes more effort to be ignorant. A lot of people live in ignorance, but have you ever noticed people that live in ignorance usually lead harsher and harder lives, right? So they literally taught a group of people who were like, I don't want to participate in this. They were like, no, it's our burden. Don't think of it as it makes you better. Think of it as, I've got to take this on.
It's a necessary evil.
It's a necessary evil. And therefore, since you're willing to do the necessary evil, then really the person willing to do the necessary evil really is willing to bless people, even if it makes them look bad. Like you gotta change the game up. Right? So there's a lot of people that believed in this. Not the people who came up with it, but there's a lot of people that believed that this was something that had to happen. So what is the white man's burden? Once again, it is the white man's burden to make sure, according to this rhetoric, that I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just thinking about the young boy in New York who shot up all those people, the black people in the store.
Mm-hmm.
He cited the white man's burden.
He cited the white man's burden. He said, and he even said, hey, they asked him, he asked himself questions. Remember, he answered, and one of his questions that he asked himself was, hey, have you ever, he knew people were going to ask, have you ever met a black person that was terrible, or a black person that was racist, or a black person that didn't deserve, or a child? If you see a child, are you going to kill it? Why would you kill an innocent child, knowing that the child, hasn't even done anything yet? And he said it's not even about that. He said that we have to make sure that our culture stays secure. He said that these children, even if they're innocent now, will grow up and become replacers. And so it was his burden to carry the gun. Right? The same stuff that's going on today is the same stuff that they were teaching yesterday. This is why you have to tell people about the origin. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. We wrestle against the origin. Right? So he might have thought that this was some new thought or some stuff he was seeing on YouTube, taking the red pill or whatever. And the reality is that he's doing nothing more than doing the same thing somebody was teaching people back then. It's your burden as a white man. That's why, we'll keep on going, right? So we got that, the white man's burden. Then after that, what do we have next up in this 5-piece real quick? And I'm going to do my best. It's going to take us a minute, but prayerfully we'll be able to upload this to YouTube, because I really want this 5-piece thing to kind of be in our rhetoric, or not our rhetoric, but in our language, to make sure that we got it. Then we have Manifest Destiny. Manifest Destiny, which basically says that I'm sorry. I'm sorry? We did. Oh, okay, hold on. Let me double check something. So we started with the Lost Cause. We talked about Manifest Destiny, number 2. So first piece was Lost Cause. Second piece was Manifest Destiny. Third piece is the white man's burden. And now in the fourth piece, we're talking about, hold on. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so yeah, we did that. So we did first the Lost Cause, then we did the Doctrine of Discovery, then we talked about the white man's burden, yeah. And then now we're talking about Manifest Destiny. Okay. So number one, I guess again, the Lost Cause. Number two, Doctrine of Discovery. Number three, White Man's Burden. Number four, Manifest Destiny. Now, Manifest Destiny basically is saying that it was something that came over. It's an add-on to the White Man's Burden, right? Rudyard Kipling, famously the writer of the Jungle Book. By the way, most of us have only read, I think it's a chapter, if that, of the Jungle Book. That's where you get the whole story of Mowgli and everything. Most people have never actually read anything else, but it's more than just that story. But when you read the Jungle Book, you'll see that basically it's trying to present to you the white man's burden of why white men are needed to be able to help other people. Even Mowgli, in a sense, kind of represents the white man, and he's going towards the man village. The man village kind of helps you to think about what white men have established, things of that nature. When you read the book, there's a lot more to it than just what we know of, right? I think there's even some versions of movies of the Jungle Book out there that go into a little bit of that, but they're not really famous, right? So we have Manifest Destiny. Well. Yeah, so now, okay, I'm sorry, now I'm getting confused. What is everybody saying now? I'm pretty sure that I called it the right stuff up until that last point now.
Yeah,
so it was the Lost Cause was first, then the Doctrine of Discovery was second, then the White Man's Burden was third. Now we're talking about Manifest Destiny fourth, right? Yeah. So Manifest Destiny, and Rudyard Kipling, he wrote a letter to the United States of America saying, please make sure that you keep up with this Manifest Destiny thing. You need to teach it. It's a continuation of the white man's burden. Now, once again, what is the white man's burden? To make sure that he brings civilization. Well, Manifest Destiny starts saying, well, we need to make sure that we take care of everything, right? So that we start spreading all over the place. So guess what? Eventually you get Texas and you get the Louisiana Purchase, and Florida belonged to Spain, but then it becomes American when America used the excuse of former slaves who had been married into different indigenous tribes here coming together, and John Horse and them running out, but Spain getting ran out. You have the Louisiana Purchase, which happens when Haiti beats the brakes off of the French, right? And then the French, Napoleon, he can't afford to try and keep going after Haiti, so he actually sells the Louisiana Purchase for next to nothing, at least comparatively to what it should have been able to sell it for. Then you've got this, the Mexican cession and all that stuff where that's taken, and then you've got the other part up in the Northeast is taken as well. This is Manifest Destiny. This was supposed to happen, and all these things that are happening, and all these things that we learned in school. They mentioned, Native people used to live there, but they never told you about what happened to the Lakota people, right? They never told you what happened to the Dakota people. They never told you what happened to the Sioux, right? They never told you any of those things. That's weird because all those things happened where the Louisiana Purchase is, but you know about the Louisiana Purchase. You don't know about the other things, though, right? You know about Massachusetts, but you don't know about the Wampanoag, right? We were where we couldn't get signal. You know about Mississippi, Georgia, all that, but you don't know about you don't know about the actual people of Mississippi, the Mississippians who made more pyramids than anywhere else in the world. Right, you don't know that the Cherokee are all up in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and a little piece of VA. Right, we don't know about the Taino, and the Taino tie all of those together. We don't know about the Khalifa people, but we do know about what was taken from Mexico, and we forget that Mexico was had their stuff, or took their stuff from Spain, and we forget that Spain took their stuff from the indigenous people. Right, but it's Manifest Destiny. You don't teach what happened. You don't teach what happened to the people of Oklahoma. You don't teach about the Hopi people. You don't teach about the Navajo, but you teach about the Mexican cession, right? We don't know about those things, right? So in that 5 piece, it's important to know that it starts off with what? We talk about that lost cause. The South shall rise again. Always remember that somewhere in there, that's not a lost cause, to make sure what? That chattel slavery, or that white men on top and black people on the bottom is relevant, right? There's never out of the conversation the lost cause, right? It'll always come back. That Confederate flag or Confederate jack, it's always going to come back, right? And then number 2, then don't forget next that you're going to be dealing with what? You're going to be dealing with the Doctrine of Discovery. The Doctrine of Discovery is going to make sure that, hey, if it ain't white Roman Catholic, then it doesn't belong to anybody else. We just we discover it, it's ours, right? Then third, right, so that's how all these teachings, medicines, pyramids, countries, whatever, you're like, hey, so-and-so's culture did that first. They're like, no, because it didn't matter until it was Roman Catholic. When white Christian males had gotten it, now we can start talking about that's the doctrine of discovery. Next, after that, we talked about the white man's burden. It is not the white man, and that's, once again, we got to even get past that, because people who are thinking they're white, and we thinking there's real white people, that's part of what they got us with. How you doing, Sister Barbara? That's part of what they got us with as well, right? The white man's burden says that it is the burden of white men, not even white women, not white children. It is the burden of white men. It is their burden. It is an opportunity for them to serve you by taking on the burden to ensure that their civilization goes everywhere, right? Then the last thing we talked about, number 4, which is still up, manifest destiny, right? Now we got to make sure this thing manifests across the world, really, but across the West first. Now that the United States is the new world power, you make sure that manifests across the earth. It is the destiny of certain people to do so. And now that gets us to the last one, which we've talked about before, and people don't really know what the title is. All right. You heard me say this before. Here we go again, just to make sure that you see it for yourself. Right? We want you to be able to look up these things. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against what? Origin, principalities. We don't know the origin of it. Now we got to add the last thing in. The last thing is evolution. And we were taught that evolution was just part of the thing. But hold on. Before you get to evolution, we got to have an honest conversation. We got to first talk about that there's a lost cause, which really says that it's not a lost cause to fight to make sure that white men stay on top and black people on the bottom. Well, number 2 in that 5 piece was the second piece, the doctrine of discovery. If it's not white Christian males that are finding it, then it doesn't mean anything. Until they find it, it's as if it never existed, right? Once they find it, they can even admit that they improved upon it. But hey, them improving upon it, until they improve upon it, doesn't matter. It's not real. It's not great. All right. Next thing after that, the white man's burden. It is the burden of white men to ensure that they cause their civilization to be able to go all over the place, right? Then that causes manifest destiny. Make sure that you take this into this modern West. Make sure the United States, which is really Turtle Island, right? So they went to a place where it wasn't theirs again. New land, strip it down, make it look specific like this, make it a well-oiled machine, and make that put that all over the world. Which now, number 5, brings us to what? To evolution. Now, somebody says to evolution now. Well, yeah, evolution is more recent, right? This book written by Charles Darwin, I don't even know. Up there it is. It says, when does it say it's written, y'all? Y'all tell me, when does this book say it's written? Was this book written in 1700? Was this book written in 1600? Was this book written 4,000 years ago? They say everybody believed in evolution, or evolution's always been, or people were... It says here, 1859. So this was written in 1859. When did Manifest Destiny start? 1800s. When did the white man's burden start? A couple hundred years before that. When did the doctrine of discovery start? A couple hundred years before that. And then what we have, the lost cause, right? And honestly, the lost cause is an 1800s thing, right? But we can see these things kind of lining up. And Charles Darwin coming out of white man's burden, manifest destiny, doctrine of discovery stuff, right? He says what? He says, I'm going to write a book. Now, he's a Christian preacher, by the way. So once again, white Christian male. If a white Christian male didn't say it, then it's not discovered, correct? Just like when we doing over a global cosmology and everybody got up in their feelings, but we were talking about that the choir and we showed those pictures and everybody was frustrated by those pictures. But real talk, who had to come up with it? We think that the Roman Catholic Church was against it, but they were for it. Would it surprise you even? Some of y'all would be surprised by this. Some of y'all won't be surprised with it. But it shouldn't be too surprising for us at this point, if we've been going down this line of thought process, that when we talk about the origin of species, here to somebody, when we talk about this, guess what? The same powers that be that wanted the global cosmology to come into place, they're the same people that put money behind Charles Darwin. Because Charles Darwin was a Christian preacher. Was he not? That's what his degree is in. You see, it says Charles Darwin, M.A. You think that M.A. means something different. No, like Charles Darwin is a preacher. He's a Christian preacher. Right? That's what Charles Darwin is. White Christian male, doctrine of discovery. And he told you, this is the name of his book. People don't be believing me. So sometimes you got to make sure you show them. You got to make sure that they see what's really going on. It says what? The origin of species by means of what? Natural selection. Now, this isn't even really the original title, but this is pretty daggone close. The origin of species by means of natural selection, or some books would say the origin of species, the theory of evolution, by means of natural selection, or the preservation, read it for yourself, because y'all hear me say this all the time, and sometimes people don't be believing me till they see it, or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life, or some versions even say for the struggle for survival. The survival of favored races, the struggle of survival for favored races. This is what the book says. Put all this stuff together, right? Charles Darwin. Now go read the book, and you'll see that he says that every color, every race of people, which he didn't even make up those classifications. Somebody else did. A slave owner did. So a slave owner we've shown that before. A slave owner made 4 classifications. He made one basically for white people, right, or what he called European, which they break down because there's different Europeans, because they didn't like all the Europeans, right? But in his book, he breaks them down. But the guy said basically there's white people. He said there's red people, that's the natives, right? Indigenous people. He didn't even think about anybody native anywhere else. He was just like, there's basically white people, there's like red people, there's yellow people, that's the Asians, and there's black people. He put those classifications together. Charles Darwin says, hey, I'll do you one better. I'll not only give you more classifications and make sure that only a few of us white people are on top, I'll tell you how basically it's scientific, even though he's a preacher and didn't even really go to school the way he was supposed to. He got his bachelor's paid for after a year. And then he says, I'll do you even one better than that. I'll make sure. I'm sorry.
Well, I just noticed that in the title of the book, at the bottom, it says that Charles Darwin was a fellow of the Royal Geological Linnaean, etc. Society. Carl Linnaeus is the one who classified all the stuff that people use in science today.
Right, Carl Linnaeus, exactly. That's code, right? But once again, people don't catch that. So you're seeing, and Carl Linnaeus classifies people. Charles Darwin takes it to the next level. And what does Charles Darwin's cousin do? He creates eugenics, which takes Linnaeus' classification and says, we'll take it. We won't even just do it by color. We'll take it to the bone. We'll take it to the bone structure. We'll show you the bone structure. We'll tell you about blood and DNA stuff they didn't even know existed. But we'll show you that the bone structure says. That's why one of those more haunting scenes from Django, for a lot of people, I think it's an excellent scene. You got to be in the right frame of mind to watch it. But that scene where Leonardo DiCaprio goes off and he starts talking about the 3 dots in the back of the skull, and then says, basically starts calling him the N-word in front of him and stuff like that, when he realizes that they're trying to trick him out of letting go of Django's wife or whatever, and all that stuff, and all those things that are going on. Like, you gotta realize, like, that's based off truth. Like, that's based off of truth, that whole scene, right? He was literally saying, because of bone structure, right, that white men he was saying black men could not even begin to hold the ability to think like white men could, because they were missing 3 dots to the back of the skull. That's what he was saying, right? That's Charles Darwin's cousin. That's Charles Darwin. That's Linnaean, right? Carl Linnaeus. That's what they're giving you. They're giving you the same thing. And what are those things based off of? They're based off of that 5-piece. They're based off of what? Number 1, lost cause rhetoric, if you can remember lost cause. Number 2, if you can remember the doctrine of discovery. Number 3, if you can remember the white man's burden. Number 4, if you can remember manifest destiny. Number 5, the origin of species, evolution, excuse me. If you can remember those, you got it. Everything that you're seeing today, that's a fight, in the same fight over and over again, coming from that 5-piece right there. They keep feeding it to people. And until people realize that you've been duped into that, and all 5 of them come from a place to where, once again, what was the common denominator in all 5? Roman Catholic Church. Beast. 5 pieces of Americana, we can call it. But yeah, if you can remember that 5-piece, right? You can remember that 5-piece, you're gonna be doing all right. So hopefully you got something out. I'm sorry, yes. You were saying, okay. So hopefully you got something out of it. Thank y'all once again. I apologize. It just wasn't in the cards for this rising, but we will try to do a makeup. So I'll try to put it on Google Calendar and make sure people can see it. But we'll be on. Basically, I'm gonna try and get up at about 6 the next 3 days, and make sure we knock out these 2 makeup early riser Bible study sessions, and also on the 3rd one we'll knock out the makeup. Even though everybody won't have access to that, but Patreon family, on Thursday we'll try to knock out the makeup for our Patreon hour session. Also, too, don't forget October 6th on my born day, we're going to start doing that month. We're going to start doing once a week something specific just for people that might want to get a little extra as well. So we're going to create a 2nd tier on Patreon. So keep listening out for that, looking for that. But thank you all so much. Please check out everything that we're doing, including what my wife is doing, the Honorable Amma, on TikTok, YouTube, or website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And do not forget that the tincture of the month is I Am Rested. Take time out to support that, and we thank you so much. And we honor you guys. We look forward to talking to you all again, and we'll be back on tomorrow. And thank you again for your time. We appreciate it. So, as always, this has been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being a voice to the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, y'all should know that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.